So, welcome everybody to the Legal Lowdown. I am Chris Burrell.
And I'm Terrell McCants with Burrell and McCants.
And we just want to take a moment to welcome everybody. We know that there's a lot going on in the world of law. So this is an opportunity for us to answer your questions about current and confusing legal matters. So with that said, tonight's topic is going to be COVID and the courts. Now, before we begin, I just want to give you a little bit of background information about us. I'm Chris Burrell. I've been in practice here for 10 years, almost 11 years now. I practice primarily in Birmingham municipal courts, state courts all over the state of Alabama, and also in federal court. My practice consists of mostly criminal defense and personal injury cases. We also do some small business formations and other things, but that's a little bit about me. Turn it over to my partner, Terrell McCants.
I'm Terrell McCants. I've also been practicing here in Birmingham for almost 11 years. My primary practice is in federal court. I work civil rights cases, police misconduct, and employment discrimination cases. And Chris and I are in partnership, have been in partnership for about 4 years now.
All right, so cool. So as I said before, we handle cases all over the state. I handle from municipal court all the way up to federal court. Terrell does the same. Now, he handles a lot of employment cases, so he's in federal court a lot more often than I am. But the benefit to that is we get to give you a lot of perspective about everything that's happening in all the courts, the full range of courts. Before we begin, though, we want to just take a minute to kind of give you some background information. I'm sorry, to give you some disclaimers. The folks at the bar want us to do this. So, hey, it's not something that we want to do, but we have to. Basically, we want to make sure that everyone understands no representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. Also, the information that we're sharing tonight is just going to be just that, information. Do not take this as legal advice about your specific case, okay? And even if we answer a question that you pose to us, no attorney-client relationship is formed just by us providing that information, okay? So, Terrell, you ready to get into it?
I'm ready. Let's go, Chris.
All right, so all week we've been getting a lot of questions about COVID and the courts and what's going on. So this is an opportunity for us to sit down, answer those questions, and see what everybody see what everybody's thinking about what's going on. So we've gathered up some questions, and we want to take this moment to take this time to go ahead and start answering those questions. So what I want to do is make sure I pull up my live here, so I can actually see the questions that are coming in. So if you got any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comment box, and we'll make sure that we get to those. So that said, let's see, what's the first question? What should I do if I have COVID and a court date? Terrell, what should somebody do if they have COVID and they end up having a court date?
If you have COVID and you have a court date, you should do like you would do with any other thing that you have outside your home. Do not go to that court date. Make sure you contact your attorney to let your attorney know that you have COVID or that you've been exposed to someone with COVID. Because the court, we all want to stay safe, and no one wants you to come with COVID and possibly get other people sick.
Okay. All right. I think that's great information. I mean, it's just kind of like one of those common sense type things, right? You know, if you know you have it, especially if you've tested positive for it, definitely don't go to court. You know, we don't want to get anyone else sick. We got to really take care of each other. So that's really good advice. Another thing that we always recommend is make sure you contact your attorney. Your attorney needs to know these things. Okay. Anytime you have a COVID or you've been exposed to COVID, make sure you let your attorney know that so that they can tell the court what's going on. The last thing you want to do is be in a position where you haven't spoken with your attorney. Your attorney can't tell the court what's going on with you. So make sure you talk to your attorney and let them know, that you have COVID or that you've been exposed to somebody with COVID. Now, I'm going to give you another tip here. A lot of judges are hip to the fact that people are using this as an excuse. So if you do have COVID, make sure that you get your medical documentation as well, because they are asking for it. You can't just say, well, I had COVID and I missed the court date, and then 2 weeks later you still got COVID, or a month and a half later you still got COVID. It's not gonna be that simple for you. So make sure you talk to your attorney, and also make sure that you provide documentation of your positive test, or if you've been hospitalized or anything along those lines. Okay. All right. So let's see. We got some more questions coming in. somebody asked, is my statute of limitations passed because of the court closures? So does that stop? All right, first of all, let's explain what statute of limitations is. Statute of limitations is the amount of time that you have to file a lawsuit in the event that something happens. So like, for instance, if you were in a car wreck, you would have 2 years from the date of that accident to file a lawsuit against the person that hit you. So is the statute of limitations stopped because of the court closures, Toriel?
The simple answer is no. Court statute of limitations continue to go on. The court closures don't affect the statute of limitations. If you have a statute of limitations that is approaching, you need to contact a lawyer and make sure you get your case filed, or you get someone to look into it to get your case filed, because once that statute of limitations runs, as Chris said, like a car accident is 2 years, false arrest is also 2 years, and there are different statutes of limitations that you have to adhere to. If you don't, you will lose your right to file suit. And with the courts being closed, or if the courts are closed, your lawyer can file electronically. The electronic filing is not closed. Also, there are ways to do emergency filings if the court is closed through taking documents to the court. So you always want to make sure that you are getting those cases in and are on top of that statute of limitations.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said before, statute of limitations, those are set by law. So there has to be really a law passed in order to toll the statute of limitations, or to stop it, or to pause it, or anything like along those lines. So make sure that that you talk to your attorney in the event that you have a cause of action. Anytime something happens, like if you're in a wreck or if you're injured or whatever the case may be, anytime something like that happens, make sure you go ahead and call an attorney quickly, because like we said before, those statute of limitations are set by law. That time continues to run, and the last thing you want to do is end up going to the courthouse a day after your statute of limitations is passed. So that's very important. But just to answer that question again, just because the courts have been closed, your statute of limitation has not stopped. It continues to roll, okay? Let me see what else we got here. Looking around, trying to make sure I find some more questions here. Let's see, you see that question there, Terrell? Number 3?
Yes.
Let's talk about that one.
Okay. So the next question is, I have a case in Birmingham Municipal Court. When do I go to court on it?
All right, so Birmingham Municipal Court, that's where I practice a lot. One of the things that I do is I help people get their driver's license back. So I'm in Birmingham Municipal Court a lot. I'm in a lot of municipal courts. Unfortunately, right now, Birmingham Municipal Court is closed. It's closed to the public. It's been closed for a couple of weeks now. However, the good thing is there is hope. I've been hearing that they are going to reopen soon, and Birmingham Municipal Court is also taking advantage of the of virtual courts. So if you have traffic tickets and things like that, if they give you a court date on that traffic ticket, most likely you can either appear virtually, or they're sending those traffic tickets, they're sending those court dates far enough in advance that you'll be able to actually go hopefully by the time you have that court date, courts will be back open up. So, but for right now, misdemeanor cases, those will be things like assaults or theft cases and things like that. Those cases are still put on pause. So you're not going to court for those. But if you have a traffic ticket, most likely you're going to appear virtually by virtual court. So that's what's going on in Birmingham Municipal Court right now. But I know for the last year almost, every case that I've had that was set for trial ended up being continued just because, the closures and all of those things.
Yes. And Chris is the expert on those, on municipal court, so listen to him.
All right. So somebody asked about jury trials. Somebody said, when will I be able to have a jury trial? So what about jury trials, Terrell?
Okay. Most state court jury trials, I think, have been postponed to a date in the future. We'll figure that out as it comes. But federal court trials, there have been a couple going on, and what they're doing is having jurors social distance, having plexiglass in the courtroom, around the witnesses, around the judge. And they're limiting the amount of jurors to 8. Usually with no alternates, so you could have the room for people to to safely gather and conduct jury trials. So there have been a couple that I've known. I've been set for one. We ended up not going, but that trial was set and not postponed because of COVID.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I handle a lot of state court cases. Right now, there are no jury trials in state court. So when we're talking about state court, we're talking about Jefferson County, Shelby County, Blount County. These are all areas that I practice in. Right now, we're not having any jury trials in state court. Now, that could change. Of course, everybody knows that last year there were no jury trials basically from, I think, March on through the rest of the year. So cases are really backed up. At the beginning of this year, Judge Elizabeth French, who was the presiding judge over Jefferson County, she actually came out with a very ambitious trial schedule. Usually we have 1 week a month where we have jury trials. Well, the trial schedule that came out for the beginning of 2021, some months had like three weeks that we were going to be doing jury trials. Unfortunately, we've gotten through January, we've gotten through February, and we still haven't been able to do those. So that means that for the rest of the year, we're really going to be having jury trials. I'm expecting that, with the more people getting vaccinated, the number of cases going down, hopefully, things will get back to some sort of normalcy, and we'll begin to resume those jury trials. But just know that in state court, there are, like I said before, some months have 2 and 3 jury weeks that we're going to be really trying to get those cases tried. So for right now, there are no jury trials, but that doesn't mean that won't change in the future. See, we got some more questions coming out. Let's see. All right, so somebody asked, can I request to put off a trial or a hearing if I have concerns about COVID? So Terrell, what do you think about that?
That will be one that there's not a clear-cut answer on it, but with anything else, you will want to contact your lawyer first to let him know about your concerns and have him see if he will put it before the court to move the hearing. And the courts they've been accommodating with people that have concerns about COVID and health issues like that. So the only thing you can do is ask, and if the court will look into it and usually be compassionate about it and try to alleviate your concerns either by methods of making the hearing safer or by moving it off or to try to assuage your concerns.
Gotcha. Okay, and actually, yeah, Terrell's exactly right. No court or really no judge is going to force you to come to court. I mean, if you're a 75-year-old person, or if you're a younger person, if you have like an underlying health condition, if you have diabetes, or the other things that we've heard, the underlying health conditions that people have, if you tell the court that, they're not likely to make you come to court. They're not going to jeopardize your health and all of those things. Now, like we said before, you got to be really careful about how you get court dates reset and all of those things, because judges like to move their dockets along. They're not going to just keep kicking that case down the road. So if it gets to a point where your case is 3 or 4 years old, they may try to get you to go ahead and try to get it settled, or whatever the case may be. But the way things are right now, I think that you will be hard pressed to find a judge who's going to make you come to court. So if you have concerns about COVID, or if you have underlying health conditions, or whatever the case may be, just make sure you call your attorney first. If you don't have an attorney, make sure you call the court and let them know what your concerns are, and see if they'll give you or push your case a little bit further down. But that's really the best advice we can give as far as that goes. Now remember, ultimately the judge makes that decision, but as I said before, the judges here in Jefferson County, and really all the judges, they're really compassionate, and they don't want to jeopardize anybody's health. So just make sure you let your concerns be known. Now that question actually goes really well into another question that came up. The question that followed that one was, can I request a virtual hearing? So virtual hearings, Terrell, tell us about what's going on with virtual hearings.
Virtual hearings are hearings that are conducted by usually Zoom or whatever video audio system that your court is using. I've had virtual hearings in federal court as well as state court since the pandemic has been happening. And if you are, like Chris said, going back to the last question, if you have concerns about COVID, a lot of times the court is already doing virtual hearings without you having to request them. But if you have some concerns, the courts generally have the technology to do virtual hearings and allow you to attend by video phone on your phone or on your computer or tablet. So that is definitely happening. You can definitely request a virtual hearing. And again, the only way to find out is to ask. Make sure you ask your attorney to run it by the judge. And the worst thing that can happen is he or she says no.
Yeah. Now, also, like I said, we're doing a lot of hearings right now via Zoom. I got to tell y'all a funny story about this one. I had a client just last week. We were on a Zoom call, and the Zoom calls, they look a lot just like a regular courtroom. Like, so, you know, you go into a courtroom and you got 20 people in there. Well, it looks just like that on Zoom. So I get on Zoom. My client, he said apparently that was his first time using it. So he had his video turned off. And of course, it didn't have his name on it. It just said iPhone. So when I get in, I'm scrolling along. I never see his face. And then, you know, apparently he had been there the whole time. So there were like 2 or 3 people who didn't show up for their court dates, or their attorneys didn't know where they were. And so the judge was getting a little pissed off. And so she was like, well, this is not a good day for people not showing up for court. And again, they get upset for you missing court on Zoom just the way they would if you missed court in person. Yes. So long story short, just as I'm getting ready to get off, I see my client on there, and he's got his phone, like, you know, turned upside down. I'm seeing the roof of his car and all this kind of stuff. And so I made it a point to go back and tell the judge, like, I actually waited, like, you know, I was like, Judge, my client was there. He was there the whole time. He had his phone on and everything. So she was, like, telling him good job for being there and all that stuff. And then, of course, he didn't know what he was doing. So he's talking into the phone. We don't hear anything. And then everybody's just cracking up laughing. So it was just one of those things. But I said all that to say that there are still growing pains, but the courts are really utilizing this technology. And that goes back to the last question we had about people having concerns about coming to court. The court is really utilizing this type of technology to be able to move their dockets along, get things done, but also being able to recognize the needs of the public to be safe. You know, we can't congregate together. We can't have a lot of people in one place and all of those things. So that's why it's really important for us to be able to use stuff like Zoom and, you know, whatever other channels courts are using at this point. But all that to say, yes, there are virtual hearings. As a matter of fact, I had a judge this past week offer me to have a trial virtually. I didn't quite know how that was going to work out, so I talked to my client about it, and my client was a little bit concerned, so we just, you know, passed. But, you know, that is an option that judges are offering at this point. Now, remember, we're talking about bench trials, not jury trials. We're talking about bench trials with just the judge. Yeah, the judge is going to be the person who hears the facts and makes the decision. Those types of cases are being set for virtual hearings. So always keep that in mind. Oh, this is a great question here. Somebody wrote in and they said, I want to start a business. Can I still do that at probate court? So what do you know about that, Terrell?
Just found out that now you don't go to probate court, and we have gone to probate court for my entire practice for a decade now. But you don't do that anymore. You can send your articles directly to Montgomery, to the Secretary of State, to open businesses now. So it makes it more convenient. You take out that step of going to the probate court and then them sending it to Secretary of State. So yes, you can still start a business while the probate court is closed.
Okay.
Or when the probate
And we're going to just keep it real, y'all. Terrell was actually supposed to ask me that question. But, hey, you know, we're on live, y'all. So, you know, sometimes things mess up. But
just you told me about that before.
But, yeah, so that's why he looked kind of off. He was like, oh, I just learned this. But, no. The small businesses that I formed just this year, late last year, the Secretary of State implemented a rule where all of like we used to be able to go to probate court, file in articles of organization or articles of formation. Now those have to go directly to the Secretary of State in Montgomery. So the reason that's important is because, one, the filing fee has gone up a little bit. It used to be, well, all counties set their own filing fee, but we'll just use Jefferson County, for example. In Jefferson County, the filing fee used to be a total of $160. It was $60 to Jefferson County and $100 to the Secretary of State. Well, now, since everything is going directly to the Secretary of State, it's a single filing fee of $200. Now, another thing you need to be aware of is When you're filing, or when you're forming a business, you have to do articles of formation or articles of organization. Everybody's heard about LLCs and all that stuff. I know at the beginning of the year it was a huge thing. Everybody's talking about starting a business so they can get, grants and funds and all this kind of stuff. We actually did a video about that. But the point that I'm making is, when you're doing that, make sure that you get an attorney who actually knows what they're doing, because it's not just a simple matter of writing up, hey, I want to start a business, sending $200 to Montgomery. You need to actually have articles of organization, and you also need to reserve the name and make sure that name is proper. There are rules about how LLC names have to be formed and all of those things. So make sure you get an attorney that knows what they're doing. But back to the topic of what we're talking about here, because the courts have made some changes due to COVID, you'll no longer be filing your articles of organization at the probate court. Those will be going directly to Montgomery, to the Secretary of State there. All right, we are getting close to the end of our time, but we got one more question. We're going to take our last question, and this is a really big question. I know this is something that's on a lot of people's minds. This question is, I can't pay my rent, and my landlord has filed for an eviction. How can I fight that? So, Terrell, what can you tell us about how we can fight, or how people can fight evictions?
Okay, for now, there is a moratorium on evictions. I just read an article here today, actually, where a federal judge, I kind of read the headline, I was in a rush, but I read a headline saying the federal judge had deemed the CDC's eviction moratorium unconstitutional. So we don't know where that's going to go yet. That doesn't mean that it goes away just because the federal judge somewhere ruled that, but that could go to the higher court, could go to the Supreme Court, and we'll find out what happens with that. But if you're being evicted, you want to look at your individual circumstances and find out whether the moratorium applies to you, because there are certain things such as income, whether you received a stimulus check. If you received a stimulus check, if your income is over $99,000, the eviction moratorium may not apply to you. This is another situation where, and I know this sounds self-serving, but you want to talk to a lawyer and find out what applies to you. This eviction is obviously very serious. Where you live is a very serious matter on most people's plates, if not everyone's plate. So you want to talk to a lawyer to see what applies to you and what doesn't, and make sure that you're in accordance with whatever your situation is.
Gotcha. All right. Now, also, I want to kind of give some pointers to people who may be renting houses. Again, you need to know this information as well. If you have somebody who's living in your house and they're not paying rent, you need to know about the eviction moratorium as well. And basically what that means is there's a certain period of time that you can't kick someone out of a house if they're not paying rent or whatever the case may be. Now, from a landlord standpoint, the one thing you need to know is that there are certain things that also have to be filed along with the eviction. So, especially here in Jefferson County, the judges are really sticklers about how you do the notice of termination, all the things that has to go before you actually do the eviction. You also have to give the tenant there's a form that comes from Jefferson County. You have to give the tenant an opportunity to write on that form, the efforts that they've made in order to pay the rent or to get assistance and things like that. Also, if the house is secured by an FHA loan or FHA mortgage, then it may be subject to the eviction moratorium. So those are the types of things that you need to know if you're renting a house to somebody. Again, if you don't know those things, you need to make sure that you get an attorney who is well versed in the law and also in the local procedures, so that when you file an eviction, that it doesn't get kicked out of court. So those are some very important things to know, both from the tenant standpoint, but also from the landlord standpoint. Well, y'all, that's almost all the time that we have.
I think we have one question in the comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's Rashida Reese.
Okay. All right, so Rashida's question is, what's the advantage of having an attorney to form your business versus doing it yourself? Oh my goodness. Where can I start? We were just talking about this today. There are so many advantages to having an attorney to form your business. one of the primary advantages is, like I said before, you need to know where you're actually going to form your business. Because of COVID, we just talked about this a second ago for those who may be joining us. Because of COVID, you're no longer forming your business at the probate court, where you used to take it down and file everything in. Now it has to go directly to the Secretary of State. A lot of non-lawyers don't know that. But what we do here at our firm is when someone comes to us and they say they want to start a business, okay, the first thing we'll do is we'll sit down with them and we'll talk about what their goals are, what type of business they want to start, all of those things. And then we figure out the best way to form that business. You may think that you want to form an LLC, but you could actually form a nonprofit. Or you could, maybe best for you to be incorporated. Or if you have a partner, maybe you want to form an LLP, which is a limited liability partnership. There are so many different things that you'll find out just by having a conversation with a lawyer versus trying to do things on LegalZoom or filing papers on your own. Another really good example, we talked about this just a moment ago. There are rules, like say for instance, if you want to form an LLC, there are rules as to how that name of that company needs to be laid out. Otherwise, it could be voided by the Secretary of State. So you don't want to be in a position where you're sending stuff down to the Secretary of State, especially without the benefit of a lawyer or legal advice. And then, a month later, you get a rejection notice saying that your LLC has not been formed. So you're around here telling people you have a business, but in actuality, you don't. So those are just some of the benefits. But the most important thing is having someone that you can actually sit down, talk with, touch and feel. Oh, that sounds kind of creepy. Somebody that you can sit down and feel. Somebody that you can at least sit down face to face and talk with, and kind of talk about what your goals and desires are, and and help you form your business that way. So I think that's probably the biggest benefit of having a lawyer, having an attorney to do your business versus doing it yourself.
And also, if you're going to an attorney that runs a business, like we do,
exactly,
we have business experience. We can give you tips on best practices that we have for running a business that you wouldn't get from LegalZoom. You're gonna get a pre-made form or whatever, but you're not gonna get the network or the years of experience in running a business and the practical advice on that.
Absolutely. And, you know what, Tori, that's a really good point. One of the things that I do is I form relationships with people that I build businesses for, or that I form businesses for. I form relationships to help them build their business. One of the things I do is I refer them to professionals that I know and use.
Yes.
I'll refer them to marketing people. I'll refer them to bankers. I'll refer them to, accountants, things like that. I mean, and that's the benefit that you get for having an attorney versus doing things on your own or doing, LegalZoom or some other format that where you don't get that additional benefit as well. It's going to cost you a little bit of money. Like let's be clear about that. But if you're doing it the right way and you're wanting the best result, I always tell people this way: you never look for a reasonably priced doctor, do you? You want the best doctor. If something happened to you tomorrow, you wouldn't be concerned about what it's going to cost you. You want the best doctor who has the most skill. Well, look at attorneys the same way. Get that extra benefit by going to somebody who knows what they're doing, but also who has relationships with people that you're going to eventually need to do business with. So hopefully that answers your question, Rashida. If anybody else has any questions, like I said, we're going to wrap up the show now, but if anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. We'll definitely be looking at these, but also send them to our inbox. That way we can know from you all what types of shows you want us to do, what you want to hear about, what legal topics are confusing to you or concerning or whatever the case may be. Also, we're going to do a little bit of some swag giveaways. So we got some Barella McCants mugs here. We got the really cool Barella McCants mugs with the blue inside. That's very different. We also have masks and we've got pins and all kinds of stuff. So we'll be doing swag giveaways. But the way that we'll be kind of figuring out how we're going to give stuff out is by people who are communicating with us. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your questions. We want to hear about things that you want to see us talk about. Also, every Tuesday, we do something called 2-Minute Tuesday. That's where we spend about 2 minutes talking about legal topics and explaining things. And it can be all the way from traffic tickets, all the way up to forming a business, to appealing a case to the Supreme Court. So check out those 2-Minute Tuesdays. Those are every Tuesday. However, if you want to see us live, we'll be going live once a month on the Legal Lowdown. And that's what you've been watching tonight. So thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. So
We appreciate that.
we appreciate that. We got Jay-Z quotes for everything. We're going to let y'all know that now, okay? So if you hear me say something that sounds familiar, it's probably because I stole it from the Jigga Man. But anyway, thank y'all for coming out. God bless. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
All right.